all this preparation and this training for destruction, there went on an opposite kind of preparation. Preparation for the business of saving life, of preserving limb and tissue, of easing pain. Through the endless months of war games and maneuvers, the medical corpsmen of the ground forces worked with their units. They grew tough and inured to battle conditions. They learned the prime importance of speed. D-Day. The great plan is put to the test. The medics have moved in with them and their work begins. Aid stations are established on the spot, and an astounding record starts piling up. The checkup later reveals that 80 to 90% of the wounded received medical care within 10 minutes of being hit.
What's up everyone, you got Mind Circus here with you, and welcome to the first episode of the support build series for Mind Over Meta. Today we're going to be taking a look at Support Engineer and Scrapper in specific. But before we get started, if you are new to Guild Wars 2, new to the channel, or just haven't done so yet, I am currently farming likes and subscribes in an effort to build the channel, and would greatly appreciate if you hook me up with one of those below the video. And with that said and out of the way, hey, let's get into it here. Support Scrapper for PvE. It's actually one of my favorite things. Bit of a meme for the longest time, but I actually think it's pretty viable right now. Before I get too far into it, let me just again kind of point your attention to the series intro when it comes to what these builds are for, who they're for, and what they're used for. These are absolutely off-meta builds, and don't recommend they be played in raids or T4 fractals. So absolutely go ahead and take a look at that video if you haven't yet, and if you have, hey, glad to have you with me. Let's take a look. I love Engineer for a lot of reasons. Number one, and I've said it before, I love the aesthetic of Engineer. I love the idea of taking giant contraptions out of my pockets and playing it like a Looney Tunes cartoon. It's absolutely fantastic, and I think it's one of those things that you don't really see in a whole lot of other MMOs. The number two reason I really prefer Engineer to any other class in the game, with Revenant and Elementalist coming up second and third, is the flexibility of the class. Now, Engineer can be a number of different things. It's an excellent open world generalist, both as Scrapper and as Holosmith. It's solid DPS in instanced PvE content via Holosmith and Scrapper as well. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And it's great support. I started playing Support Scrapper in World vs. World. I think in World vs. World, if you've played a lot of the in-group content, you can start to understand the value of Scrapper. When in the proper hands, Scrapper is peerless when it comes to being a cleanse bot or a support bot. The heals are absolutely fantastic. They're some of the strongest heals in the game. But when it comes to the ability to both clear conditions, turn them into boons, there's no class that comes close in World vs. World. But in PvE, I think it was a bit of a meme until recently. Scrapper has absolutely strong heals, like I mentioned. But if strong heals were all it took, then I don't think people would play anything but Ventari Rev or maybe Tempest. Those are obviously stronger straight-up heals than what Scrapper has at its disposal. But it's absolutely strong heals. But beyond that, what does it bring to the table? And that becomes the real question, particularly in PvE. Scrapper's main utility, as I mentioned in World vs. World, is Condi Cleanse, and no other class can touch it. But in PvE, Condi Cleanse isn't the biggest value. There are a lot of encounters where we see no Condi play. There are some encounters where we see significant amounts. It's kind of a situational thing. But all this changed a little while ago when Scrapper got some really amazing buffs to the quickness it can provide. And quickness is one of the most essential boons in PvE. I think when we talk about the boons that are essential in PvE, I think might, obviously, being capped out on 25 stacks of might is essential. I think that quickness can be very essential. I think alacrity is very important. And to a lesser extent, the rest of the boons can come into play, things like regen and Aegis and things like that. But I think that quickness absolutely kind of stands up there near the top of the list of the desired boons in PvE. So now Scrapper can perma quickness on a 5-man group pretty easily, and that's in addition to its healing potential. So with that in mind, I think Scrapper is it's in a pretty good place. I think it's pretty good support. It's got strong heals, it's got perma quickness, it's got super speed, which is not only useful for the people that we play with, but can be a real benefit when it comes to speed buffing NPCs. And what that can do is significantly reduce the downtime as we're doing little escorting bits between encounters in places like dungeons or DRMs specifically, where we're escorting a lot of NPCs and DRMs, particularly the early ones. So, is it meta? Of course not, but that's not what you come to this channel for. So let's get started. In terms of the strengths and the weaknesses that this build actually brings, we'll start with the strengths. The first strength is perma quickness. It permas quickness easily, quickly, efficiently. It takes 2-3 gyros tops to get that quickness permit, and it's really a fantastic thing. It's kind of a fire and forget it kind of deal. There's some other things that we can do with it, but yeah, the quickness is absolutely the number one thing that we're going to be playing this build for. The number two thing, as I mentioned before, very, very strong heals in terms of, a top 10. It's A tier. It's, third place as far as the healing builds that I actually tested. And to put it in perspective, when I started this series, I have about 9 different support builds that I'll play to varying degrees. And this one came in third place for outbound heals. So very, very strong heals. And the third is super speed. Super speed is a really, really great buff. And as I mentioned, and I'll touch on it again, as we are in group content, being able to super speed NPCs can really reduce the time between encounters. And having one person to do that can be the difference, on that DRM between, hitting that timer that we set for us and not hitting it. So super speed, I really love. Obviously, in encounters where we want to be stacked, it's of lesser value, but we'll get into it when we get into the gameplay section of the video here. In terms of the weaknesses of this build, the number one weakness is weak might generation. This build will generate about half the might you need, if that. And I think that that's really important to point out. So if you can make sure that your team is providing their own might, or somebody else on the team is doing so, then you're golden. You're absolutely golden. The number two weakness of this build, I find, is it's clicky. And that means that we will be pressing a lot of powers. When I consider the APM on this build, and if you're not familiar with the term APM, that stands for actions per minute, and that's just the rate at which we need to be kind of clicking powers or clicking skills. If you're not comfortable with a high APM build, this may not be something that you want to get into, but it is a higher APM build than maybe some of the other things that I'll put up in the following days. And finally, stacking. This build really depends on the people that you play with stacking correctly. It doesn't have a whole lot of ability to kind of generate the support it needs or the value that it provides if people aren't stacked. Now, that's a good and a bad thing. Obviously, it's a good thing in that it might, teach the people that you're playing with to stack, which is not always the case, particularly, if you're running people who are new to the game. Or unfortunately, I find the issue with longbow rangers more than just anything else, not maintaining proper distance and proper grouping. But really, it really necessitates that. In terms of it's a bad thing, you don't have the ability, like in, say, Scourge, to place a shade somewhere to provide somebody support, or quickly blow a war horn at somebody who may be out of position and get them some speed like you can, or some heals like you can on Tempest. So really, it's a build for people who know how to stack. So for people who aren't stacking, it can be an absolute lesson for the value of staying grouped in group content. So with all that said and done, let's get into the build and the gear here. We'll pull this up, and first we'll take a look at the gear. And the gear is all Minstrel's gear. All right, so for those of you who may not be completely in the loop in terms of what the gear provides, this is going to be a toughness and healing power major with a vitality and concentration minor. Now, keep in mind that the toughness is is the number one reason you're not bringing this to a raid. Okay, if you are interested in raiding, support NG is probably not your best course of action. Otherwise, it's fantastic. It really is. So keep that in mind. The toughness is going to interfere with a lot of established aggro management techniques and raids, so definitely don't be running it there. Don't be running it in T4 fractals, like I've said in my series intro. So we're going to be running complete Minstrel's gear. We'll go over here and take a look at the armor. Again, is Minstrel's, and I am running Monk runes. Now, Monk runes are probably the absolute best number one set of runes that you can be running in any kind of support character. And we'll take a look at the bonuses. Obviously, we've got healing, we've got extra boon duration. Extra boon duration is going to play into our quickness values, so that's absolutely where we want to go with that. Now, the addition is a 10% healing effectiveness to other allies bump and increased healing effectiveness to other allies by an additional 1% for 3 seconds after granting a boon to an ally up to a maximum of 10 stacks. Okay, so again, this is going to increase our healing output very dramatically. You can obviously see the benefit of these runes. Now, for those of you not in the know, the Monk runes are going to be gained by running the Ascalon Catacombs dungeons, specifically the Explorables, and then going to the dungeon vendor in Lion's Arch and purchasing those runes there. Other options for the runes are obviously the reward tracks in SPVP and in World vs. World. Otherwise, that's the only way to get the runes, so keep that in mind. I would highly recommend you, if you're going to be onboarding into a number of different support builds, to start running those dungeons on a regular basis and getting a couple of sets of these runes put to the side if you're the kind of player that likes to play some support alts. Absolutely the number one way to go. We're going to be running Hammer. Now, there may be some people out there asking me why we're going to be running Hammer. There's a couple of reasons for it. We'll be running a Minstrel's Hammer. We could obviously run the pistol shield combo. I find that the pistol shield combo, the pistol absolutely maintains 0 value, where we can get a little value out of the hammer, and the shield is only really good for blasting fields. So really going to recommend that you stick with the hammer on this one, and we'll get into it. We'll be using the hammer generally to generate some vulnerability for our team, which is obviously a very big part of the value that we're going to be providing. Inside the hammer, we are going to be running a sigil of concentration, which is another 10% boon duration, and a sigil of transference, which will increase our healing to other allies by an additional 10%. Now, if we go over here and we take a look, with all this set up, we are running at 89.93% boon duration. Where are we getting the rest of the boon duration becomes the question. If we go in here, we will look at 2 different foods, and these are absolutely cheap foods, and by cheap I mean we can get them in the portable World versus World vendor here for the paltry cost of 5 badges of honor. We will be running compact quality maintenance oils, okay, and when we use one of those, all right, that'll take our boon duration up to 95%, and then we will be running boxed chocolate raspberry creams, which is another 80% boon duration and gives us 32% magic find while under the effect of a boon, which is pretty much always. And if we use that, we overcap slightly to 100%. So we could min-max this obviously, but I don't think the overcapping is really a huge deal. Obviously we could grab a slightly different food or a number of different options at that point, but that's the way I run it. I'm not worried about an extra couple of points here or there by overcapping. So let's go ahead now and take a look at our build. So our build here, we are going to be running Alchemy, we're going to be running Inventions, and we're going to be running Scrapper. Under Alchemy, our first choice here is Health Insurance, increase your incoming healing effectiveness. That's not why we're running it. We are running gain increased healing to others while using a med kit. Med kit is going to be our big source of healing, and that obviously is another 10% healing increase there, which really is what puts the med kit in an excellent place in terms of the green numbers it's providing. We're going to be using Backpack Regenerator, recover health every second when using an engineering kit. The only reason we're using that is the other options. Granting regeneration from an ally when you remove a condition is an option. If we are going into scenarios where Condi play is part of it, we'll get into the main changes, this being one of them, and we'd be wanting to be running purity purpose over here. But for the most part, where there isn't a whole lot of Condi play, obviously this is for drinking an elixir when we're under the health threshold isn't of super value, so we're going to be running Backpack Regenerator. But again, if we're going into Condi play, then we'll definitely wanting to run Comeback here. Finally, we're going to be running under Iron Blooded, and again, this is, you know, just a function of the other options not being as great. I mean, if we take a look at what we're getting here out of the line itself, this is the main reason that we're taking the line here. We're taking it for health insurance, and we're taking it for compounding chemicals. Heal yourself when you grant a boon, gain increased concentration. That's 240 concentration, which is, you know, if you ask me, that's overpowered. That's huge. So keep that one in mind. Going over here, you know, we have Purity of Purpose. We have HGH. Purity of Purpose, again, if we're running into Condi play, we'll want to make that swap, but otherwise, Iron Blooded is the way we want to go. Going over here to Inventions. Inventions, we will be running Automated Medical Response. Heal skills are recharged when you are struck below the health threshold. So this means when you are under 25% and hit, all of your heal skills will recharge. This is specifically talking about Bandage Self. All right, and we'll get into that in a few moments. We're going to be running Soothing Detonation, heal nearby allies when using a tool belt skill. Well, so this means that all of your tool belt skills can provide a heal. All right. And if you notice, one of the beautiful things about that is there's no cooldown. Finally, Medical Dispersion Field. A percentage of healing you apply to yourself is shared with nearby allies. So this means any heal that you're going to give yourself, and you've got one pretty strong heal, is actually going to be halved out to your nearby allies, the nearest 5 people. So highly recommend this one. Again, the options here, not of great support value. Going under here to Scrapper, this is really where the magic starts, and this is gyroscopic acceleration. And what this means is well abilities, and well abilities are your gyros, have an increased area of effect and grant super speed to nearby allies on their final pulse. Your function gyro also grants super speeds to allies when cast. So this is great. This is where we're going to be getting our super speed, but where it all comes together is a little bit further. Speed of synergy. Using a heal skill grants super speed in a radius around you. And again, this gets back to bandage self. All right. It's important to note that, you know, our kit, okay, our med kit here does not actually count as a heal. This is going to be all kind of go on bandage self, and it'll give 5 seconds of super speed, which is of huge value. We're going to be using expert examination here on this one. Expert examination, stunning or dazing a foe, applies vulnerability and weakness to them. 5 stacks of vuln is a beautiful thing. The stuns are copious on this build. The crowd control is on par, is on point, so to speak, so definitely of huge value. You know, damage dampener is of questionable value. I've never really found a huge reason to be running this, and object in motion is going to be for running a DPS build. Impact Savant, a percentage of the strike damage you deal is converted into barrier. Your vitality is reduced. Part of the reason that we're running the Minstrel's gear is to get the vitality that we are losing from this here, which is mandatory on all Scrapper. But kinetic accelerators gain concentration based on your power. When you grant super speed to a target, also grant quickness. So as you've seen already, we're going to be granting a whole lot of super speed in an area around us, and with this trait we will be getting a quickness buff to everybody, or to 5 people. And I think that this really is where it all comes into play. The concentration that you're gaining based on power, well, you're not suiting up any power gear, and really I'm going to recommend running the Minstrel's gear for a few different reasons. You could obviously go ahead and run a Harrier setup and gain more value from the power, but again, I'm going to recommend just sticking with Minstrels on this one. You won't be getting a ton of quickness there, or sorry, concentration there, but as you've seen, the way we've got this all set up, we're already capping our concentration, or over capping it just a little bit. So there you have it. That would be the build in the gear. And if you are a regular viewer to my build videos, then you know it. At about this time, we take a look at the outfit that I have provided here. Now, if you have watched the previous Scrapper video, I would encourage you to go to the timestamps down below and skip this little portion, because absolutely nothing has changed. I love this character's look so much. Looking at our wardrobe here, all right, we're going to be running the racing goggles. The racing goggles came via Beetle Racing. Beetle Racing being probably the best side game in any MMO ever, as far as I'm concerned. I'm a bit of a fan of Beetle Racing. I'm not very good at it. We'll be clear at that. But it took me a little while. Farmed up the number of racing medallions I needed for these goggles, which I think are absolutely fantastic. Going to be running the shoulder scarf. The shoulder scarf is a gem store item, available on and off in the gem store, like so many of the other gem store items are. Going to be running the Aether Blade Medium Jerkin. The Aether Blade Jerkin is a gem store set. If you are not a big fan of spending money on the gem store, my big recommendation is to check back regularly in the Black Lion statuette vendor, and running a weekly key farm. Shameless plug, I may or may not on my channel have a Black Lion key farm guide, and really, you know, running that once a week will get us a few of the Black Lion statuettes, and these Gemstar armor sets show up on a regular basis in there. We will also be running the Minstrel's Aether Blade Medium Arm Guard. So these are the gloves that we're running. The gloves, obviously, same part of the same one. Going to be running the Magic Tech leggings. Really, any leggings could do here. You could barely see them under this outfit, so we won't worry about that too much. and we are running the Triumphant Heroes Shimplates. The Triumphant Heroes Shimplates are gained in World vs. World. Highly recommend, if you are into the armor skins in this game that are earnable in-game, that you take a look at the Triumphant set that are earned in World vs. World. They are absolutely fantastic skins. On the hammer, we are going to be running the Stellar Orrery. The Stellar weapons are achieved in the Domain of Istan via the Meteorite Grind. Depending on how you feel about that, you'll need to craft a few of them for the Ascended Trinket anyway, so you may want to take a look at that. But I'm a big actual fan of this weapon when we pull it out here. I really like the way that looked with the rest of the weapon. Transmuted my legendary because I like the look of that so much better. Absolutely fantastic effect on that hammer there. If we take a look at the particles, just gorgeous. And the last couple, the offhand, are the second weapon set. I will be using the Glitched Adventure Pistol, which we will get in the Super Adventure box. When that is on, we can earn the glitch pistol, which I quite like the effect of. If we take a look at that, yeah, that little glitch effect is absolutely fantastic. It's just great. And the shield is an old gem store one. That is the Inquest Mark II shield. And again, just a fantastic one. And when we stow that, looks quite different, quite like that look. And that is our Fashion Wars. So let's take a little look now at the way this all comes together and the way that we're actually going to play it. So what you'll see at this point for our purposes of testing and explanation is I have set down a mildly threatening pulsing damage in the raid practice lobby. So we can definitely get a start to get a look at what we're doing here and how we're providing boons. Now, the first thing that we'll take a look at is the raw healing. And for the raw healing, we're going to go into the med kit. Once we've got the med kit down, our main heals are going to come from the one, which is just going to be an auto attack. Now, this is one of the things that makes the healing on this character so absolutely viable. We have the ability to just keep auto attacking on this, and there aren't many heals in the game that come back that quickly. So it's obviously not the strongest thing in the world, but it is absolutely viable. Okay, we're going to be doing a base healing and then a healing for each boon on our allies. It's got pulses. It's pretty decent. We also have the infusion bomb. Now, the infusion bomb here, okay, is going to generate some regen. Okay, so it's going to generate also some swiftness and some vigor. One of the things that this build actually does provide is a little bit of vigor, which is absolutely of value to us. So putting that down is obviously good. But where we're getting the bulk of extra healing on this, we're going to put down the 2, okay, which is going to do healing and regen. And then we've got the ability to, and I'll just reset my cooldowns here, generate a little bit of a combo field as well. So if we put down the 3, which is a combo field, a water field, okay, and then blast that, we'll get area healing off that one. All right. Finally, unleash a cascade of concentrated healing vapors around you. Obviously, self-explanatory. That is a lot of healing at our disposal, and it really does come to, you know, almost the point of what we can get from, say, Healbrand, which can obviously pop into its tomes and start to provide the healing there. So we've got a lot of healing support on this build. Another place that we're going to get our healing from, and we'll just step into the field here, take a little bit of damage until our health comes down, is we're going to be on our elite, okay, running the supply crate. Now, with the supply crate, just dump that down, okay, and that's going to provide us a fair bit of heal right there. So this would probably be a really good point to kind of reset this here, blow that up, put pull ourselves out of healing and take a look at the other utilities. Obviously, we're using the med kit. The supply crate is where I go to on this one. Now, if you are running into situations where you need stealth, obviously what we'll do here is we'll run the stealth gyro. The other thing about the stealth gyro is because it's a well, it will be providing a super speed, and as a consequence of the traits that we've taken, will also provide us with quickness. So if you're running into a situation where you are not able to keep your quickness up with the other gyros that are on the on your bar here, then taking the sneak gyro is absolutely a good idea. If you're running into places where you need to skip with some stealth, the sneak gyro is absolutely great. Otherwise, I'm running the supply crate. The supply crate will be running for a couple of different reasons. We'll get into the other reason that we're running the supply crate when we get to the CC portion of what we're talking about. The other things on our bar here, we're going to be running the shredder gyro, we're going to be running the blast gyro, and we're going to be running the purge gyro. Let's touch on the purge gyro first. The only reason to run this is quickness generation for the most part. If we get into situations where we are running this for Condi Cleanse, obviously then what we're going to be wanting to do is making the changes in our build to support the actual cleansing. When we go over here, we're also going to be running Blast Gyro. Blast Gyro is interesting in that Blast Gyro is one of the few powers in the game that is both a combo field and a combo finisher, and if we put this down, you'll see what happens. Okay. That'll blast might there, and if you look, that's a quick 11 stacks of might. 11 stacks of might is absolutely nothing to shake your fist at. It's decent, but it isn't exactly, you know, something that we can rely on to really, you know, provide the might that we need. We want to make sure that, you know, when we're running this build, that other people in the party might be bringing their own might. So there you have it. But obviously the consequence again is as that detonates, we'll get super speed and therefore quickness. And we're going to be running the Shredder Gyro. The Shredder Gyro is one of my favorite gyros. It's a whirl finisher. The whirl finisher obviously is of negligible or contentious value, depending on who you ask. But in terms of that, if I go into my med kit, okay, and I put down that water field on the 3, and then I hit that, I'm going to get some healing bolts and a little bit of extra healing value off that. The other benefit is we can actually go ahead and proc the Shredder Gyro inside one of our lightning fields, of which we actually have 3, which will provide brutal bolts. And take a quick look at that. We'll throw down a spare capacitor and then hit that, so we'll get brutal bolts off that, which can be of decent value as well. Let me touch on the last gyros that we're not using. We're not using the medic gyro. The medic gyro, if you're running into situations where your team doesn't need a whole lot of speed, a whole lot of heals, then the medic gyro may be everything you need. It's not a lot of value in terms of heal when we compare it to the med kit, but it's a decent area heal. So if we were to do that, then we could start looking at swapping out one of the other gyros, probably for one of the elixirs like Elixir U or Elixir B, to provide some offensive boons, okay, or some stability there. Now these obviously are impacting ourselves, but if we put these, we have a tool belt skill here, which can provide some stability and one other boon to our party, to the nearest 5 people. So that's a pretty big value if we decide to go that way. In terms of the Bulwark Gyro, I'll just touch on this really quickly. The Bulwark Gyro is not for people who are new to this build. The Bulwark Gyro takes incoming damage to other people in your team and makes it yours. This can get you killed. That said, there are ways to mitigate that. So, you know, as you start getting better, you may find that the Bulwark Gyro may be of bigger use than, say, the Purge Gyro. But for the time being, I'm just going to say, hey, run the Purge Gyro. The Purge Gyro will absolutely give you the value of the quickness that you need without running the risk of killing you. On our tool belt here, it's important to realize that obviously Bandage Self is going to provide 5 seconds of super speed and is going to give us quickness to the nearest 5 people. We're going to be using Spare Capacitor. Spare Capacitor comes off the Shredder Gyro and is going to give us a whole lot of value for our break bar session, which we'll take a look at in a little bit. We'll get bypass coding. Now, bypass coding is actually one of the reasons that we're using the blast gyro. Bypass coding is just straight up super speed as well as a stun break, okay? And that's not just a stun break for you, that's a stun break for 5 people. So it's a very powerful skill on your tool belt. Chemical field, negligible value. It's not something you're going to use a whole lot of. And finally, the function gyro. The function gyro comes into play in a number of different ways when we are playing. The function gyro's main use is going to be a combo field, as well as giving, okay, super speed to 3 people around you, which is obviously of great value. But one of the things about the function gyro is if you have a downed ally and you place the function gyro on them, the function gyro will start to resurrect your fallen ally, which is obviously huge value, which means that you can throw that function gyro down on them and go ahead and start doing some of the other things that you need to be doing at the same time. So function gyro, obviously also a lightning field, which we can proc that way. So that's kind of the basics of using the powers on this. Really keeping in mind that, you know, your big value or your main kind of rotation is just going to be, and I'll reset my powers here, is just going to be stepping in, okay, hitting your gyros off cooldown to maintain your quickness. All right, and if you see that quickness is up there pretty quickly, we'll then use bandage self, bypass coding. That's maintained a decent number of boons here, but the outbound boons that we're going to be providing here are obviously the quickness, the might, and the swiftness, which obviously huge value there. And that really is the way that we're going to use it. We're going to make sure that people are standing in front of us. We're going to be going into here, and we're just going to be healing them with our little mist in front. And then, like I said, just kind of hitting these little combos off cooldown. So the last thing we'll look at when we're talking about the gameplay is, first off, about generating vulnerability. When we start to just auto-attack, you can see that vulnerability starts to build on the enemy. If you're unaware of what vulnerability is, it's extra damage for everybody on your team. All right, so we're going to be generating vulnerability that way. We're also going to get a ton of vulnerability off the hammer 4, and if we put that up, we look at that vulnerability climbing pretty quickly there. So really that's what the main value of our attacking is, and why we're, say, using this over the other options for our weapons, is just generating the vulnerability. We're also going to get some vulnerability off the hammer 5. The other thing that you'll see here is we are going to be getting some break bar hate off the hammer 5. Break bar hate is really decent on this build. Let's take a look at the other options for break bar hate while we're here. What we'll do is we'll go and dump the elite down here, okay? And the supply crate is huge break bar hate. It's also a heal. This is the main reason that I'm going to favor the supply crate over, say, the other gyros or any of the other options that we have available to us. So we'll wait a couple of seconds for the break bar to come back up, and we'll take a look at a couple of the other options that we have. The first being the combo. So hitting our hammer 3 through any lightning field, okay, is going to give us Chasing Strike, which is pretty big break bar hate. So that's obviously a quick win, and we can obviously proc that through the function gyro field, okay, and also through spare capacitor. Speaking of spare capacitor, there we go. There's a little bit more break bar hate. And once that bar comes back up, we'll talk about our final bit of break bar hate on this one, and that comes via the blast gyro. Now the blast gyro, as I showed you earlier, is again going to generate a whole bunch of might for us. The thing that we want to keep in mind is it does huge area knockback. Now, against trash mobs, that's going to send them flying and could create some problems for your melee groups. You want to make sure that you're kind of watching yourself on that one. But more to the point, we'll just come in here and let's take a look at what that does to a break bar. And that's pretty savage. So again, once we've got it that far, we can just drop our lightning field, hit our dazing strikes, or do just about anything we need to bring that down. So keeping in mind that if you're not doing your healing, your best value here is generating vulnerability. And obviously, we'll be making sure that we keep our quickness up at all times. And that really is the basics of it. Swapping into our heal when we need to heal the people around us, and making sure that everybody is within reach of those wells or those gyros to maintain the bounce. So really, guys, that's about it. I hope you've enjoyed my first support build video here. At this point, support scrapper is absolutely viable. Don't let anybody tell you differently. And really set up correctly, I think, is a really fun alternative to some of the other support that's out there. At this point, hey, I'm going to thank you all very much for watching. And if you made it to the end here, hey, thank you very, very much. I'm also going to remind you guys to have fun in game and min-max your real life, and we'll see you again in the mists.